Mhlambi of, is that close enough?
Yeah, it's acceptable.
Of the Berkman Klein Center and the Carr Center, both at Harvard.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'll be sharing a paper which I wrote on this topic. The design and use of machine learning systems and the application of algorithms in mediating human affairs without communal accountability and regulation presents significant ethical challenges in Ubuntu, which is a sub-Saharan African relational humanism philosophy. When the role of an individual is defined in a communal context, personalization and algorithmic individualization are considered a process of dehumanization. Furthermore, the centralization of data and the centralization of power amongst a few companies, countries, and continents violates Ubuntu's principles of equitable distribution, restoration, and reciprocity. The current conversations and efforts of ethics and justice in machine learning suffer the same flaws of the biased algorithmic systems, as their exclusiveness also reinforces discriminatory social biases. As algorithms and automated decision-making systems increasingly play a role in mediating our lives, stronger concepts of fairness and justice that prioritize communal good over individualistic priorities are needed to better society through the offering of the widest range of social protection. Today, I will explore Ubuntu's notions of justice and equity, and how they can be applied in creating machine learning solutions. I will focus on greater inclusion based on the principle of bottom-up governance and the distribution of power. Secondly, I will explore data sovereignty based on the principle of communal good and the community's responsibility to the individual. Ubuntu is based on a sub-Saharan Africa's traditional worldview and spirituality, which defines the universe as a spiritual whole in which all beings are organically interrelated and interdependent. An individual is inextricably interrelated with their community in the same way that all dimensions of reality are also interrelated. In the context of Ubuntu, the community is the environment a human exists in, and it is composed of present, previous, and future generations, and includes nature itself. Ubuntu asserts that a person is a person through other persons. And a person asserts, and it is by reinforcing the humanity of others that one uplifts one's own humanity and grows in personhood. As one fulfills social obligations and has positive relations with others, one becomes more of a person. The failure to engage in social responsibility makes one less of a person. Although no one is beyond redemption, one can succeed or fail in becoming a human with person status. The relationship between the individual and the community is reciprocal, and while an individual's obligation to the community is prioritized, it does not necessarily have to crush the individual. The community is also expected to provide the necessary environment for an individual to thrive. Sub-Saharan African spiritualist assertion that all dimensions of reality are interrelated serves as the moral foundation of Ubuntu, which then obligates a person and the community to maintain and affirm this universal harmony, which is the interconnectedness of the human experience. Therefore, acting individualistically through prioritizing one's own interest over the community's well-being, or having excessive surplus while others needlessly suffer, violates this harmony and brings about chaos. Personhood is then an idealized status which is not immediately conferred to an individual at birth. An individual must be educated and nurtured by the community in order to learn the community's order and the interrelatedness of humans. In this case, the saying that a village raises a child takes on significant meaning, as the community is expected to provide the necessary environment for an individual to become a fully functioning member of society who has attained full personhood. This is not to say that humans should not be protected at an individual level, but it's to say that at every level of development, the goal of the human is to reach a level where the individual can maintain and live in harmony with the community through the community's dedicated commitment to the individual in bringing the individual into social harmony. To be human is to be in community, and attaining full personhood is marked by a heightened maturity of ethical sense through the fulfillment of one's responsibilities to society. An individual has dignity and immense worth in that they are a necessary part of the whole. An individual's actions affect the well-being of the community. The individual is important to the community's success. The community and the individual are interrelated, and as the individual possesses the potential to learn how to be ethical, no individual is beyond redemption. It is up to the individual and the community to both act in producing harmony. Equity, restorative justice, and the decentralization of power are natural results from unity. No individual entity can become too powerful, and power is distributed amongst the community. Ubuntu offers us a framework to reimagine internet technology, ethics, and algorithmic decision-making from an inclusive and from a justice-oriented approach. When technology is applied in a global scale, it creates a global-wide community. The human community is diverse in its values and priorities, and these differences must be considered to prevent against discrimination of any particular group. The problem arises when a value system is applied to other communities who might share different values. Extending community to vulnerable populations extends protection and recourse to marginalized communities. Vulnerable populations should be recognized as part of the community and should be considered in the design, implementation, and the ecosystem of machine learning. Their voices should be included in the discourse on ethics in machine learning as a condition to addressing the inequalities which may be exacerbated by machine learning systems. The current discourse on ethics and machine learning is not only exclusive, but does not consider alternative ethical systems. A homogeneity is assumed when discussing ethics in technology, and it posits Western ethics as a default framework in addressing the harmful effects of technology. The dominance of Western philosophy and values in the creation of autonomous or intelligent systems is a form of coloniality in which the ways of knowing, feeling, thinking, and being are dominated by the Western world. Coloniality is the continuation of colonialism, which furthers the epistemicide of indigenous knowledge systems. It perpetuates the myth that the Western world has the monopoly and exclusive rights on human progress and human values. The imposition of a society's belief on another society is simply colonial. This process of domination is carried out under immense power asymmetries, which undermine the ability of disadvantaged communities to resist or willingly consent. True equality and freedom requires that an idea that is applied to the community is one that is accepted and decided by the community under fair negotiations and with an aim towards the good of the community. Autonomous and intelligent systems exist and interact with the community, and as they act individualistically, they threaten the good of the community. The value system that prioritizes autonomy and freedom over the well-being of the community is likely to create or worsen inequalities. Ethics is a protocol for human interaction, and equity must be at the core of ethics. Ethics is not missing in technology. Equity is. The technology society creates and chooses not to create is the window into the ethics and values of the powerful. The technological feats and the business models that sustain them are a mirror to the priorities of the few who hold the power and the capability to create technology. When technology companies, for instance, in the process of amassing power on society, it is not just an oversight, it is an insight into their ethics. It is an insight to power at work under individualistic values. Machine learning is not immoral. Machine learning acquires moral agency as it is designed by humans and mediates on behalf of humans. The process of building machine learning systems requires time, effort, capital, and material. These are value-based conscious decisions. This process is not an unbiased one. It is a process that directly embeds the creator's ethical values through the prioritization of features. The ethics of those who hold the power to bring about technology matters. It is their ethics that becomes applied through their spheres of influence. The more power that one has, the more imperative that one is more ethical and capable of fulfilling the social responsibility afforded by power. When autonomous machines engage with human communities, they must be expected to follow the ethics and values of the communities that they're in. Ubuntu's principle of restorative justice requires restoring the voices of the marginalized and including them in the design of technology. As a bias towards Western ethics and philosophy begins to shift to allow for alternative ethical systems, it will be important to create standards and compliance measures to ensure that an autonomous and intelligent system is a responsible member of the community. The process of individualizing a person strips a person from their connectedness and status as an integral part of the whole, therefore bringing vulnerability to the person, community, or both. Reduction or the objectification of an entity leads to the commodification of that entity. This pattern historically was demonstrated in the Euro-North American reduction and objectification of humans in the African continent and their land, which led to the commodification of both. Today, the commodification of data, spurred by greedy business models, it's a reality now termed surveillance capitalism, which is an instance of coloniality. The power asymmetries between users and the online platforms that commodify and collect user data in order to create predictive models that can influence the users, sometimes in subtle ways, for non-communal good, are individualistic and violate the principles of Ubuntu and are characteristic of colonialism. This relationship is more emphasized, especially when algorithms apply to vulnerable populations, especially members of the global south. In content recommendation systems, the reduction of the human being to non-causal metrics optimized for company's profit strips away the interrelatedness and complexity of the person and creates the potential for an individualistic business model that maximizes the company's individualistic gain over communal good. The process of individualization that breaks a person's connectedness, humanity, is a process of dehumanization. As artificial intelligence is not able to infer causality in the data that it processes, it is difficult to provide recommendations that are based on the assessment of a user's actual needs. Most widely used recommendation systems are not able to provide value-based recommendations. The metric of the success quickly becomes maximizing a user's attention and behavior, as opposed to successfully collaborating with the user to provide value-based recommendations. When a company is incentivized to prioritize their own profits over the user's good or the communal good, it creates a precarious situation in which harmful content may be maximized if it will maximize the company's profits and the possibility of creating filter bubbles. Ubuntu would classify these negative effects of machine learning, which are caused by the automation of existing inequalities, as a process of dehumanization. This process of dehumanization is individualistic and is a result of placing one's interest above the community's interest. Dehumanization reduces the ability for an individual to be in harmony with society. For example, a non-discretionary filtering of content may create filter bubbles that limit the ability for humans to act in community. An alternative is to create well-being metrics. These are metrics that capture the well-being of an individual or society. These metrics could include social, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and environmental aspects. Being cognizant of these metrics that can capture a wider aspect of what it means to be human can be useful in designing and testing for these metrics before the product is released to the world. Users having full control of their own data and being able to aggregate it for communal good is a model that can lead us to justice and equity. When data ownership is removed from companies that are not accountable to the users or the public, it weakens the ability for private entities to exploit personal data. Under Ubuntu's framework, individual personal data could be aggregated for social good, provided that it is sufficiently anonymized, thus removing the ability for any party to marginalize another. In this model, the individual prioritizes communal good through offering useful data. However, the community asserts the humanity of the individual in providing the necessary environment that will anonymize and perhaps dehumanize the individual. In order to truly have data sovereignty and machine learning systems that have positive effects on society, we must develop the sense that the internet is a shared space and a shared resource. The internet further reinforces an interconnected world whose reality and governance can be described by Ubuntu, in that disrupting the interconnectedness that the internet may bring is bound to create power asymmetries that lead to chaos. Harmful machine learning systems applied at scale through the internet will further fragment society and disproportionately affect communities that are already disadvantaged. Efforts must be made to make the internet accessible and simultaneously to keep individual data secure and in the custody of individuals. Machine learning systems not accessed by users online, yet still being applied to users, also must be designed to maintain the humanity and dignity of those it affects. In practical terms, the community as it relates to autonomous intelligent systems involves researchers, programmers, and end users working together for communal good. So where can Ubuntu be applied? In what communities can Ubuntu be applied? The principles of Ubuntu can be applied between the members of the AI research community. It can also be applied between the AI community, programmers, computer scientists, and the end users. Another category is between the AI community, computer scientists, and the AI systems themselves. And this can also be between the end users and the AI systems. The last category is between AI systems together. We can apply the principles of Ubuntu in these different communities. In conclusion, Ubuntu offers us a way to reimagine equity and justice that may address the inequalities that may be exacerbated by machine learning. This framework provides the necessary ideology to protect individual data and only aggregate user anonymized data on behalf of the community's expressed interests. Excessive greed driven by individual interests that outweigh the interests of the community can motivate the design of algorithmic predictive systems that intentionally include the user's motivations and maximize value to the users. Ubuntu posits equity as a necessary component of ethics and one that warrants the inclusion of vulnerable communities in the design and decision-making of algorithmic systems. Machine learning will also have to better society by equitably addressing the extremities of surplus and lack that can arise when the individuals take priority over the communal good. The process of being human is directly related to the ethical responsibility, and as machine learning continues to increase its role in the mitigation of human affairs, it will need to have stronger ethical concerns. The promised gains of artificial intelligence may remain elusive until we reimagine artificial intelligence and internet technology in a more interrelated and more interconnected framework.